Welcome everyone to today's webinar. I am Megan McCormack with Beckers Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation and panel discussion, and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled "Enter a question for staff" and clicking send. We are looking forward to hearing your questions. Additionally, in about a week following the webinar, we will be sending you a copy of the presentation to the email you used to register. Shiv Gopalkrishnan is the Vice President and General Manager for GE's Enterprise Financial Management business, which encompasses an enterprise and ambulatory revenue cycle products, EDI, payer provider solutions, and analytics. In this role, he is responsible for driving product vision, roadmap execution, sales, and services support for the business. Jerry Lynn Sevenacre has more than 38 years of experience in healthcare revenue cycle and financial management. She is responsible for hospital access service and business office functions, centralized billing and collections, charge master, health information management, and enterprise customer service and patient collections for Shar Healthcare in San Diego, California. Andrew LeBlanc, Decision Support Manager for Middlesex Hospital, is responsible for implementing, designing, and providing support for business and administrative analytics within all revenue cycle functional areas. Over his 10 years with Middlesex, Andy has worked to find revenue opportunities related to cost reductions and/or charging efficiency, and focuses on architecting business intelligence tools that assist in decision support activities. Jonathan Shar is a Senior Decision Support Analyst at Middlesex Hospital, working on the decision support team handling data warehousing, business intelligence, and data analytics for the hospital and medical group, where he has been since 2014. Prior to Middlesex, Jonathan was the Assistant Controller for the University of Virginia School of Medicine and held various financial and analytical roles at Oregon Health and Science University's Hospital and School of Medicine. At this time, I am pleased to turn the floor over to Shiv Gopalkrishnan to begin today's presentation.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And thank you all for joining us today. We are very excited to be able to talk about 3 innovative revenue cycle management strategies. If you go to the next page, I would say it's an understatement to say that the healthcare industry is under profound transformation. Whether it is the disruption that's caused through consumerism, whether it is through healthcare reform, whether it's regulations, just an enormous amount of change happening in this space. If you look at consumerization, the consumer is putting new demands on the healthcare system, and that's on the rise. Merger and acquisitions are still pretty high compared to where they were a few years ago. And when you look at how providers are getting paid due to healthcare and payment reforms, the shift is clearly visible. So there are significant headwinds that healthcare organizations are facing. If you go to the next slide, efficiency is increasingly becoming more and more important in today's world. When you look at revenue pressures being put in place because of regulations, costs to collect are going up. You could see how the spend on administrative costs are significantly on the rise. It's resulting in shrinking margins, and shrinking margins means providers not being able to launch this new hospital that they would want to bring in, or being able to launch this new healthcare plan, what have you, being able to care for the community and the patients. These are some real challenges that all providers are facing in this day and age. If you go to the next slide, again, the only way to unlock yourself from these challenges is through innovation. So innovation is fundamental to the success, and hence the foundation for today's webinar. With that, I'm going to pass on to cover the first innovation to Jerry-Lynn Sevenacre. Jerry-Lynn, over to you.
Good morning. Next slide. There we go. Well, I wish I looked like this all the time, but this, in fact, for the purposes of our gamification discussion, you get to see my avatar. We're going to talk a little bit about gamification and the weaving of analytics through a gamification workflow, and a little bit about engaging our workforce and retaining top-tier employees. Next slide. A little bit about Shar Healthcare. We are actually located in San Diego County. We are the largest healthcare system in San Diego with 4 acute care hospitals, 3 specialty hospitals, 3 affiliated medical groups, We do have our own health plan. It happens to be on our exchange in the area. 3 skilled nursing facilities, 23 outpatient clinics, 5 urgent care centers. We are on our journey to be a high reliability organization and are in fact participating in the Next Gen Accountable Care Organization with CMS. When you speak of our revenue cycle, we actually are quite proud. We have been top tier revenue cycle for at least 5 years now when you look at HFMA metrics and HBI metrics. We are at about 1.8% cost to collect, 45.6 days in AR, 5.8 days in DNFB. Our turnover rate is something we're pretty proud of already. It's running less than 5% in an industry where turnover rate runs about 8%. And our employee satisfaction scores for employee opinion surveys run between the 95th and 98th percentile. Next slide. So this is us working hard. We do work hard, but we actually do know how to have fun. We do a lot already as it relates to employee engagement and trying to make sure that people are vested and engaged in the work area. We do daily reliability huddles, we do rounding, we have an all-staff assembly. But a couple of things that I wanted to call out for our teams, what you're seeing here are pictures of our revenue cycle week. So some of you may celebrate Patient Access Week, some of you may celebrate Patient Financial Services Week. We've actually dedicated our own revenue cycle week. And when we look at revenue cycle week, we actually look at it at a period of time in the year when it's most critical. So we dedicate our own revenue cycle week about a month before the employee opinion survey and bring all of our employees together and really engage them in the things that we do in our division that make a difference. The top center picture you can see is a picture of our central business office team. And the things you're seeing there are our vice president gift for the week, and those are window shades. And at Sharp Healthcare, we are a lot about inspirational messaging. And what we did this year was we took 10 inspirational messages, put them on window shades, and that was our gift to all of our almost 1,000 employees in this division, so that when you go around the county, you get to see inspirational messages from the revenue cycle team. Next slide. I do pull analytics on what's going on in my division and what's happening with respect to turnover rates. And I thought it was interesting. I kind of had a little bit of a focus on what's happening with the millennial generation, what's happening with my new employees. And the pie chart you see on the left is reflective of my employee mix. So you can see I have 27% millennials, 37% baby boomers, and 36% Gen Xers. The pie chart on the right, though, was what I found most interesting. And when I looked at my turnover rate, while my turnover rate is really low, 56% of that turnover rate is the millennial generation. So I kind of looked at that like, what am I not doing to retain the best and the brightest incoming generation for revenue cycle performance? Next slide. And then, well, first I need to add a disclaimer. The Bitmoji on the right was actually sent to me by my daughter when I said, can you please send me your Bitmoji? So the fact that she's wearing a belly top and sunglasses is her idea, not mine. But I do have a teenage daughter, and I was having a conversation with my daughter one day, and we were actually talking about something that was all about her. It was a trip she was planning. And during this conversation, every break in the conversation, she went down to her cell phone. Maybe some of you can relate to that. You think you're having a great conversation, but the minute you pause, they're back to their cell phone. Well, it happened repeatedly through this conversation that, again, was all about her. And I stopped and said, who are you texting? Because the feeling was there must be somebody that she's texting that's more important than the conversation I'm having about her. And when I walked behind her, I looked at her phone, and she wasn't texting anybody. She was actually playing a game. And it just hit me. I said, what is happening in this game that is so important that you can't carry on a conversation with me? And she turned to me and she said, well, I'm almost to the next level. And just her saying that, I immediately had a light bulb go off. She's moving a widget from one place to the next, can't walk away from it, because all she wants to do is get to the next level. Next slide. And that's when gamification was born. The application of typical elements of game playing, point scoring, competition with others, rules of play to other areas of activity. And in my world, that other area of activity is the workflow. Our business and revenue cycle is moving things from unbilled to billed, trying to get a first pass clean claim, trying to get a balance paid, watching the number of calls that come in to the number of calls that are resolved. So gamification of the workflow seems like this was the perfect way to engage this new generation of employee. Next slide. So I started doing a little bit of research. And what I found was, interestingly enough, in 7 years, millennials will make up 75% of our workforce. Why this is critically important is that while you're planning workflow for your employees, our next generation of employees are digital natives. They will have spent their entire communicative life with a cell phone. Employees want real-time feedback. So think about this next generation of employees. What do they do on their cell phone? What do they do on their computer? They're engaging in social media. They're posting things. And what do they get when they post? They get immediate feedback. They know what was liked. They know what wasn't liked. When they're playing a game, they immediately know where they're scoring against their prior best score, or if they're in one of those group games, they know immediately where they are in ranking with the rest of the group. So this next generation of employees also tech savvy, competitive, they're super creative, and we need different ways of monitoring and rewarding their performance. Next slide. So we're going to go ahead and launch a poll question here. When did your employees receive feedback on their performance? Daily, your employees know how they performed at the close of each day. Weekly, individual or group performance is shared or posted. Monthly, they get to see month-end targets that are posted and they get recognized for those. Or annually, they receive their employee feedback in their annual review. So we're going to take about 20 seconds to go ahead and take the poll. And I think what I'm seeing here is pretty much the way things were happening in my area. About 43% of you are saying monthly, people know how they perform at the end of each month. 31% of you said annually. So annually they get to hear how they were doing, how their performance was. Some other areas were a little more progressive at 20% with weekly, and 8% of you have a way of recognizing your employees daily. That's awesome. Next slide. So what if we had a way of giving real-time feedback to our employees while they were performing their jobs? Do we think that could drive a desired behavior? So thinking this through, the gamification, the analytics, what if we were able to assign points to tasks in the workflow? The higher the complexity of the task, the higher the points or coins. And what if I could draft a workflow so precise that I knew what a gold standard workflow was, and if a step was being skipped in that workflow, points could be reduced. But here's the real cool thing. What if, at the end of a day, that employee that's leaving the work area knows that they had their most productive day? They know they've had their top score when they walk out the door. What if they know they've done it 3 days in a row? What if you're coaching somebody and you're trying to share with them that, you know, you need a little improvement in this, productivity's a little low compared to your peers? And what if they're actually able to see each day that they've improved their productivity? What if you see highest cash collections? What if I see somebody actually took the most calls for the day? Do we think that would change a behavior? And how about our leaders? what if our leaders could actually recognize somebody in their game? What if they could, on a very difficult account, plant a treasure in that account, so when the employee hit the account or when the account paid off, a special bonus was presented to that employee. And in talking to our teams about this, one of the things that they wanted to do, again, this is our millennial generation, they like challenges. And one of the things that they wanted to do was have the ability to challenge another team. So my Blue Cross team can challenge my Aetna team on most productivity for the day, most cash earned for the day or for the week. In an area where two people are close in score, what if one of them wanted to challenge the other employee and maybe they wanted to challenge with their own coins? I'll bet 500 of my own coins that I can do better than you today. And then various manager challenges. Some of the feedback that came from my managers is Mondays tend to be a difficult day for people to come into the call center. I don't know why, but it seems to be consistent in all call centers. And what if we were to double points on a Monday, just to reward those individuals that came in? And then the other thing that comes up, I have avatar Zs, which means avatars are sleeping. The other thing that comes up routinely in my area is Jane was walking around the work floor all day today. Nobody stopped her. She's socializing with everybody. Why isn't anybody asking her to stop? Don't we all have work to do? Well, what if your avatar up on the common work board got a Z for every 15 minutes? There was no activity on the work list. Do you think Jane would walk back to her desk long before 45 minutes, before she got 3 Zs? We believe that that would drive the behavior. So what if a quality check was failed? Because it is about quality, it's not just about productivity. So we have it in our pre-billing area, and they drop the claim, and it doesn't pass clean. First pass, the claim comes back. In those situations, there's a no point accrual. You actually have to have a clean claim for the points to accrue. Next slide. So in sharing this thought with GE, we actually thought this is a wonderful way for our teams to collaborate and create something great. So Sharp Healthcare and GE did actually join forces and kind of build this process. We pulled a group of our employees together, so the employees are vested in the success of the process. In fact, the millennials go back to their desk and start writing out all the things that we need to include in the game. But it gave them an opportunity to gain the true voice and vision of the customer and use our data so that we can actually test it and actually show that, you know what, it is working, it does make a difference. And it really actually, in my mind, creates a unique, innovative relationship reflective of the evolving business landscape. We now are at a place where I need to operate as lean as I can, and I know that my vendors need to be as lean as they can, and we need to come together and work towards those lean efficiencies. Next slide. So in our charter, I really thought, you know, I want Sharp Healthcare to be recognized for being innovative, but what I really want is to differentiate Sharp Healthcare in the industry. So when it comes to San Diego, there are actually 5 primary healthcare systems here. And my thought process on this is I want the best and the brightest to want to come to Sharp Healthcare. I want them to say, you know what, all of the things being the same in revenue cycle, when you go to Sharp Healthcare, it's different. It's an engaging workflow, and everybody knows how they're doing. They reward their employees, and their leaders know when somebody's doing a great job. Next slide. So in building the analytics piece of this, because it really does kind of hinge on analytics, we took an analytics data cube. So GE already had an analytics product. So with an analytics product, we were able to actually monitor individual tasks in a workflow. And when you're able to monitor individual tasks in a workflow, you can hang the pointing and the scoring off of those tasks. So the gaming engine comes on and lays on the analytics data cube. And there's a 15-minute refresh that happens. So while I'm saying real time, it actually translates to near real time. It updates in every 15 minutes. And there are 3 outputs. One is the individual gamer board. The next one is a common area leaderboard for the area to share. And then one of the most important pieces for my management and supervision team is the analytics, the real-time analytics to be able to monitor and course correct employee performance. Next slide. So where we had to start was really identifying the steps in a gold standard workflow. And then once we got the steps identified, really what was the point or coin value I'm going to hang off of each step. It also includes a time frame to complete the step. So we get the quality workflow in the number of steps, and I get productivity in the volume of steps. It actually drives the individual gamer board. It drives the information to the common area leaderboard, and actually drives the information to the lead and supervisor productivity analytics board. So let's take a look at what an individual gamer board might look like. Next slide. So here we go. This is for the individual employee. The individual employee, it was one of the first discussions our team had is, will the employees have a worry of having their names up there? And when it came to it, the employee said, well, how about we just create our own avatar? So the employee creates their own avatar, and on their own board, they can see their events completed, the monitoring of their productivity, they can see their accomplishments, they can see the team activity. And then one of the other interesting things that happened early on was the employee's big question, or my big question was, how do you want to be rewarded? And my thought was, great, this is going to turn into me handing out gift cards and cash every other day. But when I asked the team of employees, how do you want to be rewarded? The first words out of their mouth was, well, we would like badges and cloaks for our avatar. I had no idea what they were talking about, but when they didn't say cash, I was like, great, we'll do badges and cloaks. We augmented the idea of what other things we would use to reward, but badges and cloaks are on their gamer board. Next slide. This is an example of the common area leaderboard. So this is where throughout the day, the individuals can see how they're performing within their group. And on the bottom, you can see the banner of if there was a challenge between 2 teams, if somebody has a birthday, or if there's any other message for the day. The important thing that we realized about this board is that we need to find a way to keep it fresh. So the themes will need to be able to be changed. The colors will need to be able to be changed. For this team to be engaged, I know that I'm going to have to change things frequently. Next slide. And then the Supervisor Analytics. And this is where we can quickly see what's going on with each individual on the team, who's performing, who's not, what's going on with respect to the gamer board, where the productivity is falling, and what's happening with average time per account. Next slide. And this is the dashboard for the leader manager view, where they can actually see down the left-hand side who's going up, who's going down within their team. But they can see if somebody is having a day that just doesn't seem right for them, and know that they need to actually go. In this example, Jason is behind his usual performance for the day, and that's unusual for him. So I now have the ability to course correct in the moment, in the day, and kind of see what's going on. So if there's something I need to change, I can have some time to do it. Next slide. So here's where we're going with this, getting to the next level. We believe it will increase engagement and productivity. reduce the turnover of our millennial workers, create a pathway for staff to follow best practice protocol and prevent procedure and process drift, make work interesting and rewarding, monitor productivity real time. I mean, this is something that I have no ability to do today. I have employees that would walk out the door today and I would have no idea that they had their best day ever. And imagine a world where I could say before somebody goes home, wow, you did something awesome today in real time. And they can go home and share with their family that they had their best productive day ever. Monitor quality of work real time, provide awareness and staff recognition real time, and then give my management team analytics to make decisions, course correct real time if it's necessary, or reward real time if it's necessary or if it's warranted. Next slide. So here we go. We're focused on outcomes, improving revenue velocity, reducing escalations. Our first area that we launched is bill hold. And then at the end of the day, everything's about cash collections. So employee satisfaction and increasing cash collections. That's it for my presentation. Andy at Middlesex Hospital is next, using clinical insights and financial workflows.
Thanks, Jerry Lynn. Middlesex Hospital is a small independent community hospital located in central Connecticut. Next slide. We run about 180 staffed beds and generate approximately $400 million net revenue across all of our NDs. Some unique features about our organization are that we have 2 geographically spread out emergency departments, both of which house a suite of outpatient services which better help to serve our patients in each of these communities. We are also part of the Mayo Care Network and have achieved magnet nursing designation for a few consecutive years. We have a reasonably new set of 3 urgent care centers throughout the central and shoreline parts of the state, as well as a strong primary care network that we oversee, operating 10 practices. In addition to myself, I have Jonathan Shar with me to speak to you, and we make up about 2/3 of our small decision support team. We only really have about 3.5 FTEs total. Next slide. Middlesex has traditionally been a best-of-breed shop, meaning we have a large number of disparate systems all interface to work together, as I'm sure a number of you joining us on the call do as well. One of the drawbacks of this configuration is the fact that this leads to some siloed reporting and makes data management across all of these systems quite challenging. The old approach was to take extracts out of each individual system and rely on an analyst to manually stitch all the pertinent data points together, and only then would you be able to start to draw out the insights which were valuable. This, as you all know, takes quite a bit of time and effort, and the consistency of each of these one-off exercises often varies. About 5 years ago, we created the decision support team to provide data and analytic services to all levels of decision makers in our organization. Our task was to bridge the gaps which exist between systems to drive cohesive analytics and allow our leaders to make the most well-informed decisions they can, but more importantly, do this in a much faster cycle. Our drive is to remove that variability and get actionable insights into the hands of decision makers fast. Next slide. Merging clinical data markers to work in concert with our robust financial data allows us to achieve these goals and do so smartly. This sample you're looking at is truly a fractional representation of the data that we ingest into our enterprise data warehouse. The hub for all of this activity is Centricity Informatics, and we leverage that as our primary data and analytic platform for end users. The common theme you'll see above is sustainable metrics. That can mean a lot of things, but how we view it is that we always drive towards having a single source of truth for all metrics. That's absolutely critical, no matter how big or small of a project you're working on. The worst thing is showing up to a meeting and spending the first 5, 10, or 20 minutes arguing about which number is the right number. If that can be eliminated, you can focus your energy on making decisions, which I think you'll all agree is far more valuable. Here at Middlesex, we do, next slide, please. Here at Middlesex, we do approximately 30 total knee replacements per month. And while that might not sound all that impressive, we're proud of this volume. Within that volume on the hospital side of the house, we've also found some significant opportunity for cost reductions within this space. Through our merged clinical and financial data set, we've been able to sift through an extremely dense set of data to find provider variances, supply utilization variances quickly. Coupled with the financial cost data, our leaders can refocus resources on areas that are ripe for improvement. A typical knee replacement here costs on average about $19,000, with the direct portion of that cost making up about $10,000 of that total. Now, for knee replacements, they've typically all been done on an inpatient basis, which pays on a DRG. So any cost reduction is a welcome change to help adjust the practice patterns of our surgeons to reduce that variability and ultimately drive that direct cost figure lower. We are tracking the recent shift that CMS made on total knee replacements, removing them from the inpatient only list. So that does have a little bit of a wrinkle in this project. Next slide, please. Before we move on, I should mention that our orthopedic surgeons are not employed here at the hospital. So we do have some unique challenges when trying to incent and bring about behavior changes. One method we found to be successful thus far is being as direct and transparent as we can with sharing of data and analytics. To partner with these surgeons and have them see what is driving our requests for change goes much further towards establishing a common goal. Some of the interesting drivers we've uncovered are things like vendor loyalty. While vendor A may offer the same clinical product as vendor B at a lower cost, the surgeon may have an affinity to vendor B since they've used them for years and have a comfort level with them. Another interesting wrinkle we found is certain providers may have a pocket or category of costs on these cases which are outliers. We've dug into things like drug costs, biologics, actual implantable devices, as well as time in the OR and anesthesia-related costs. All of those things are available through analytics and available for discussion purposes with these providers. Next slide, please. This project is very early. We've only just begun the performance period of this project, so actual outcomes and firm numbers are on the light side. The conversations that have sparked with these providers can get contentious, and there's a lot of back and forth in those discussions. And the big driver there is we're all in agreement that this is the right thing to do, and we have commitment on both sides to get it done. Even though we're early, we can report that we've identified a small 5 to 8% decrease in overall total knee replacement costs, skewing more towards the most recent 3 months. Interestingly, though, we've only seen a slight about 3 to 5% decrease on the direct cost side of things. So our collective feeling is that there's still more opportunity there, and once this program gets ramped up, we should see quite a bit more in the coming months. This example is from our hospital side of the house, and now I'm going to pass this over to Jonathan Shar for an example from the practice side.
Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. This is Jonathan. And one example we found on the physician practice side of our business was with our transgender program. And the ability to combine both clinical and financial information allowed us to quantify the impact and give leaders insight into this program and its patient population. I'll pause quickly for a brief background. We're using the term transgender to describe those patients who have a gender identity not congruent with their assigned birth sex. And this is often a very shy population that has large percentages not seeking even routine health care due to fears of discrimination. That estimate is often 30% or higher. So it was very important for Middlesex to create a formal program welcoming this population for both primary care and specific care related to transitions, hormone therapy, coordination, and providing surgeries if desired. And we officially started in the second half of 2014. Anecdotally, the program had been growing, but there was no good way to group and isolate patients in order to measure that. Our access to clinical data actually gave us the ability to create logic and use clinical data markers, including diagnosis codes, problem lists, med lists, to objectively identify this population. Next slide, Megan. After obtaining that true patient list and analyzing it, what we found was surprising and very interesting. The program had grown much larger than expected in patient size. At the end of 2015, for example, the patient population was 64 unique patients, and by the end of calendar 2017, that had grown to 607 patients. Doing a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, on that time frame would be 112% annually. That's a huge number. While we don't expect that to sustain and do expect it to slow, it's very promising to see the population rise to this level so quickly. And after now taking that patient population and looking at hospital activity and ancillary services activity, we saw that 47% are using hospital-based services. And to date, in that 3-year time period, that's generated $2.4 million in net downstream revenue. On average, what we found was each patient generates $1,200 annually in net revenue to the hospital. And if we were to set a conservative estimate of an additional 100 patients annually, that's $120,000. And for those that choose further transitions that would necessitate a surgical procedure, it's obviously very beneficial for them to stay within our system. Both for the primary care providers and the outpatient specialists, they can follow these patients more easily. And for financial purposes, we can keep that revenue here. And to date, for outpatient surgical visits related to transition, we've averaged $18,000 in net revenue. If the outreach and marketing efforts can increase the percentage of patients that use our other hospital-based services, then of course we can expect further increases in net revenue. Next slide, Megan. So after looking at a financial impact, we took each unique patient's address and started to visualize this using geomaps and chloroplasts. And the results here are also very interesting. And what you see is not a distribution that we would expect. Another quick bit of background, we find ourselves in a unique market. There's 2 very large health systems that sandwich us in the middle of the state into a slim rectangle from the center down to the shore. There's one to the north and another health system that is southwest and southeast of us. So we traditionally pull patients from a very tight market. And historically, health system-wide, 65% of our unique patients are from our defined primary service area. With this population, only 35% are coming from our primary service area. And while you see on the chloroplast on the right, you see some density in the center, really we're pulling patients from all over. Again, this is promising to see and helps us understand that our efforts are paying off, and it does make sense for Middlesex to continue putting resources into this program. And an upcoming decision we've helped with is the hiring of a navigator who will, now that we have enough patients, will help them through the various services in the health system. So really using informatics with combined sources, we're able to give insight into a program that may have been overlooked. With that, Megan, to the next slide, and we will pass the presentation back to Shiv.
Fantastic, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Hey, before we get into this next section, which is about combined business office, I think it'd be apropos for me to share an analogy of an industry that we all use in our day-to-day lives very frequently, and that's travel. If you recall just a few years back, if you had to make a travel arrangement, you would have to go and book your airline tickets separately and pay for it separately, your car rentals, your hotel reservations, and anything that you would want to do around your vacation or travel, you have to do these separately, pay for them separately, and God forbid if you had a change that you needed to make. Well, in comes companies like Expedia, which allow you to have a single stop shop, a single experience, a single bill, a single point to make your changes. And quite honestly, that's the kind of innovation revenue cycle also needs in healthcare. If we go to the next slide, please. Patients have very similar expectations when you look at what they experience in non-healthcare industries versus healthcare industries. Being able to provide great customer service, delivering the expectations they have, making their lives easier or offering great value. They have very similar expectations in healthcare. And providers, visibility to identify performance trends and improving your opportunities so you can really support uniform performance across the enterprise, and having that flexibility to reduce your administrative costs that are on the rise because of the changes that are coming at you. If you go to the next slide, please. So the real answer, the foundation to be able to solve for some of these is an integrated centralized billing office where a hospital or a physician billing together can be done together at one place at the same physical location, and really being able to report it into one single leadership structure. Now, while this is really focused on the back end of a care cycle, you could apply the same concepts to the front end on patient access as well. If you go to the next slide, please. CBO is really fundamental to be able to make a change in value-based care and being able to impact the triple aim of value-based care. Whether you're talking about reducing cost by increasing efficiencies and accelerating your profitability, eliminating redundancies, and really being able to support these new payment models, or improving your outcomes by coordinating your financials across the care continuum, being able to strategically align all these different care cycles, as well as performance consistency. And then finally, improving patient satisfaction and engagement, giving them, our consumers, our patients, a common customer service experience across the continuum of care is becoming vital. If you go to the next page, please. Beckers Healthcare did a survey prior to this session where they kind of went and looked at all the leaders across healthcare and polled them on significance of combined business office for their organization, and the results were astounding. Over 73% of leaders surveyed indicated that they're motivated to implement a CBO model, or several have already done so because they see it fundamental to the shift that's happening in this industry. If you go to the next slide, please. So we'd love to do a poll with you all, and I'll read out the question and the options that we have, and then they will pop up on your screen for you to respond to them. So we'd like to have you indicate which of the following will apply to the future setup of your professional and technical billing organizations by 2020. And please do select all if they have multiple options that apply here. So choice A is use the same software vendor for both hospital and professional billing. B, use the same vendor application for both hospital and professional billing. C, have the training and skill set to do both professional and hospital billing. D, work in the same room or office space. And E, produce a single patient statement, hospital and professional charges on one bill. So the poll's up on your screen. We'll give you guys about 20 to 30 seconds to respond. See, some responses are coming through. Okay. So let's look at some of the responses. Clearly, using a similar platform, a software that's coming up on top, being able to use a similar vendor or same vendor is clearly important. And so those are coming up to the surface, as well as training your employees on both the professional and the hospital side. So those are great responses. Thank you for taking the time and doing this quick poll here. So let's go to the next page. If you look at some of the results we've also received through a similar survey, a couple of interesting trends that have emerged. Firstly, we've seen the need for a single patient statement as a key differentiator for the organization. So clearly we expect that to grow rapidly and a need for that to grow rapidly in your environments. And then you could see the rest of the options follow a similar trend to the survey that we just did online here. If you go to the next slide, please. Now, when you talk about what are the benefits and which ones are influenced highly, these three surface to the top. The first one is improving the patient's experience, the billing experience. Secondly, it's about increasing staff efficiency and how they can really be able to cut across the different systems. And third is improving overall revenue capture. And those three really stood out as key benefits that come out of the combined business office. Let's go to the next page. So a viable CBO approach really takes care of multiple facets of how you take care of patients and manage your business at the same time. Whether it's AR follow-up, whether it is coding and remit processing, whether you're taking care of your customers, your patients through call centers, and having combined analytics to be able to look across the continuum of care. So when a patient calls in, you can take care of that patient, not just for that specific encounter, but also if there's any other previous issues or open balances that need to be collected. So driving outcomes through efficiencies, alignment of goals, flexibility, and reducing your costs are critical in being able to deliver a combined business office. Let's go to the next slide, please. So just like any other initiative, combined business office also has these considerations: people, processes, technologies, and policy. To be more specific, we really need to make sure that we are considering the physician dynamics and the expectations they have. Employees are concerned about combining these business and units and having impact on their jobs and layoffs. Compelling organization priorities and competing organization priorities, I beg your pardon, really also challenging how you can actually implement a CBO. Technical limitations and geographical restrictions really challenges some of our organizations to get there from a CBO perspective. Let's go to the next page. At GE Healthcare, we are really committed to serving our customers and market with solutions that we can bring to the forefront. And we do so with Centricity Business Combined Business Office. And Centricity Business allows our organizations, our healthcare organizations who are using this software to be able to do a single view to the entire patient visit, a single system workflow, and making sure that you can manage exceptions and automate the rest, and being able to create that one single call center experience for both our provider organizations, but also for the patients. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'd like to wrap up this section with a quote from a former CFO I thought was very, very pertinent to the conversation we're having today. Centralized revenue cycle offices is necessary and a useful first step to business evolution. By combining operations, you lay a stronger foundation that allows you to be more nimble in the industry as the industry evolves. Clearly, our industry is really getting disrupted from multiple facets, and having a combined business office is a foundation that can help you innovate in and around it to be able to deliver better patient experiences and outcomes. Thank you very much. With that, I will pass it back to Scott for Q&A.
Thank you very much. Shiv, Geraldine, Andrew, Jonathan, terrific. I've got a ton of audience questions. Let me start with a couple of them. And Geraldine, let me start with you. The breakdown between non-millennials and millennials, how have the different groups responded to sort of the game theory of this or the gamification of it? Have you had different responses, different levels of engagement depending on age and so forth, those kinds of things?
That's a great question, and I get asked that every time. So I'm going to respond with a couple of examples that most people that are non-millennials can relate to. Fitbits. I think every generation probably now has at least some degree of Fitbits. If you're walking and your goal is to hit 10,000 steps a day and you're at 9,950, are you going to stop for the day? Most of us will get back, we'll do our 50, and we'll accomplish our goal for the day. One of the non-millennials came to me after I did a presentation, and they said to me, Jerry Lynn, I know exactly the feeling you're talking about. I get that feeling every time I walk into a casino. So they have a different way of getting that kind of real-time feedback for successful performance. Another person came up to me and said, the thing you're describing is how I feel when I drive my husband's car. My husband's car has one of those gauges that will gauge whether I'm getting good gas performance or not. And I can see where he was, and I will drive the car for the day and do everything I can to make sure that I am more efficient in the gas gauge than he is. So everybody uses it a little bit differently. I think it's just more apparent in the millennial generation. The first group we're rolling it out to is probably 50-50, 50% millennials and 50% non-millennials, and they're equally excited.
Gotcha, and that makes sense to us because all of us at every age can relate to the Fitbit and some of the other things you're talking about versus the total gamification of the younger generation. So fascinating observation. Thank you. Shiv, a question for you. Does the system deliver consolidated patient statements, or do you require a third party to do that? In similar question, does it deliver a consolidated statement across technical and professional billing for the patient and for the system to see?
Yeah, that's great, Scott. So I'll answer it in a couple of ways. I think a true CBO solution needs to be able to inherently produce a single patient bill. And at GE, that's what we are focused on, is to be able to create that single experience without having to have a bunch of bolt-ons and add complexity to your infrastructure and IT system. So that's really what we're focused on. I think the future in the same direction is going to extend into mobility and how you can deliver those statements in a more seamless way to your consumers, your patients. And that's where I think the market's going to go in.
And a question on the game board and the game board concept. How hard was it to design the game board, or sort of the KPIs that people see and the game board concepts in this, and how hard to implement? And I'm not sure if Shar Lynn's the right person for that, or if you are, Shiv. Can one of you guys take that question?
I'll let Shar Lynn take that one. She's the expert.
Well, the beautiful thing about doing something with your team is that they have more ideas than you do. So because the employees were part of the development and thought process of the build, they actually came up with the majority of the ideas. They actually sketched out what they wanted to see on the leaderboard. They sketched out what made sense for them. The one thing we did know is that we do need to keep it fresh. So we need to modify the backdrop each day. But even at that, we're thinking about it from a rewards perspective. So you can buy a different backdrop for your individual screen, or you can buy new things for your avatar. So it's evolving right now, but I think because the employees feel like they're part of the evolution, we're building something great that they actually are vested in.
And how hard to get implemented and get started with it? You know, how challenging? All of us, of course, you run a huge revenue cycle operation, so you're more comfortable with some of the technology. That all of us have this great mix of love and hating technology and adopting it and putting it to use. How hard to get it going with it?
Well, we're really lucky because GE was really excited about this. So very quickly, within 90 days, they came back to us with a proof of concept. So it's being rolled out in 2 areas first, so we don't have it in every area. We're actually building out in different areas as we continue to grow the gamification concept.
Got it. Thank you. And Jonathan and Andrew, maybe you could help me on this. What other kinds of innovations are you seeing in the business office, things that you see as disruptions or things that are starting to make an impact? Is that a fair question for you guys?
Sure. Specifically, you're looking at any one specific area?
Yes, or as it relates to sort of this consolidating billing systems or improving revenue cycle. What kind of disruptions are you seeing? What kinds of things are out there that you're seeing that you've been able to integrate with GE or otherwise have been helpful?
I mean, one of the big things we've been able to integrate with is, and we're a little biased being on the analytics side of things, but we actually leverage the informatics product from a dashboarding perspective, and we push those dashboards out to our patient financial services reps for AR follow-up, as well as for billing. It's nothing near what Jerry Lynn is talking about from the gamification side, but it does give them visibility on a day-to-day basis. It allows them to all look at a similar set of metrics, and we do post those on, a little antiquated corkboard, but it's a similar concept to what Jerry Lynn's driving towards. So, different implementation, much more of that old school methodology of, print some stuff out, post it. It's the whole idea of, getting things transparent and public. I don't think those concepts are necessarily new, but how they're being implemented, like what Jerry Lynn's going after from the gamification side and kind of what we've done, shining some light on these analytics and metrics. That's the innovation, and that's where we need to be a little smarter with these things. So I would say what's old is new, but it's how you're approaching it and how you're driving towards getting behavior changes. That's what this is about. The people problems are the hardest to solve, and technology can help, but those are the types of things that you really need to dedicate some effort and some focus to.
And still have to include the hands-on people skills with it, obviously, as it sounds like part of the message you're saying. Let me ask this, Shiv, you a follow-up question, a similar question. What sort of other innovations are you seeing around the central business office that have an ability to make serious improvements or be disruptive and so forth? I mean, you made the analogy from how we now purchase airline tickets and all those kinds of things and how different that is than 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we had to call the travel agent, we had to wait 24 hours, the travel agent got back to us, try and compare prices, but it was brutal, and now how easy it is. What kind of disruptions are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you look at just CBO as a standalone, that's not a new concept. That's been around the industry for a while. However, what's emerging is to be able to make that next leap in innovation, you need that foundation, and that's becoming a must-have or a need-to-have. And the innovations we're seeing are in the space of, for example, implementing new CRM capabilities or customer relationship management capabilities to be able to have a common experience that you can provide to your customers, your patients. The second thing is mobility. I think there's more and more data that needs to go back to the patients. Patient want that transparency so they can really shop around, see which best provider meets their needs. The more providers engage with those patients, the more patients will come back to the same provider system. The third thing is what Andy and Jonathan hit on, which is analytics. When you have siloed data sets, being able to drive analytics and insights, more than the analytic itself, the insight to be able to take care of that patient, whether to be able to manage a transition in care, whether to be able to close a gap in care, to be able to hit certain bonus levels and HEDIS measures, those can only come when you break down those silos. And CBO, I think, foundationally helps you unleash some of those new capabilities on top of that platform.
Thank you. So let me do this. Let me wrap up. We've had a great presentation from Andrew and Jonathan from Middlesex, Geraldine from Sharp. And Geraldine, I know I've had you on panels before and just a magnificent presenter and really gifted, so thank you. And then GE, Shiv, just remarkable work. So thank you all very, very much. I want to thank all of you. I know that the slides from this will be delivered to people in the next week or so that signed in. Most of the audience stayed on all the way through the Q&A, so we appreciate that greatly, and it's a good testament to the discussion by Jonathan, Andrew, Geraldine, and Shiv. And I think that's all I've got to wrap up. Shiv, did you have anything you wanted to say as a follow-up or anything you wanted to close with?
Well, I would just say thank you again. I think your insights that you provided to the polls, please keep those comments flowing. You know how to get a hold of all of us. We'd love to learn from you. Hopefully we've shared some new innovations that can help you improve the way you take care of your patients and the health of your organization. So thank you again for joining. It was wonderful to have you all.
Thank you so much. And again, Geraldine, Shiv, Jonathan, Andrew, we appreciate all of your time and the insights from GE and your organizations. Thank you so much. We'll wrap up now. Thank you.